When you feel good and you feel complete and you feel grounded, there's no feeling like that in the world, right? No drugs can give you that feeling, no drinks, no conversation. When you have that stillness within you that just brings you that peace, you want more of that. And that's what India gave me. Yeah. When you reach that state, there's no explanation. There are no words for it, because that's the idea of it. You're beyond the mind, right? When you go beyond the mind in that state, you're just observing everything. Everything is just is. Nobody is black, nobody's Jewish, nobody's woman, everything is just is. That's why you have no conflict, you have no emotions, it's just as is. There are no words to explain it except that. Even the feeling of peacefulness leaves. You're not at peace anymore. You just are.
Hi, I'm Shoma Chaudhury. Thanks for watching Inquiry. I have an unusual guest on the show today. Yogi Cameron is an Iranian-British supermodel who used to be the face of Versace, Levi's, Chanel, and many other super big brands. He was Madonna's love interest in a music video. He was earning $50,000 a day for his work, and he had the world at his feet. But he gave up all of that and came to India and spent 12 years delving deep into yoga and Ayurveda. It'll be fascinating to ask him what triggered that journey. What did he find here? As Indians, we're often very blind about the kind of rich heritage that we have in our country. A couple of weeks ago, Prime Minister Modi invited the WHO chief to set up a global center for traditional medicine here in Gujarat. The intention was to harness science to create more data, reliability, and evidence, and so really strengthen the power of traditional medicine. 80% of the world's population engages and relies on traditional medicine. So this is a really important initiative, and it'll be compelling to hear Yogi describe his story and how it transformed him. Thank you very much for being on Inquiry, Yogi. It's an absolute pleasure to see you after all these pandemic years. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to see you.
First of all, for the audience who don't know your story, I wanted to start with your personal story, that you were the toast of the Western world. You were a fashion model for Versace and for Levi's and for Gas, earning $50,000 a day. You were in Madonna's, video as her love interest. And then you give that up and spend 12 years in India studying Ayurveda and yoga. How did that happen?
It all happened just the way it should, like everything in our lives, right? I was walking down the street in London and somebody stopped me and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about being a model?" And at the time I was going to sports college, studying economics and playing tennis. And I was like, well, maybe I could take a year out. I'll do this. And then literally a month or so later, I was living in Paris, never went back to school or college, and started for 12 years, that journey in the fashion business. And I was caught that wave of supermodels, because before that, sort of designers were the most important. We didn't have social media and stuff back then. So suddenly models became important, and we would put in videos. So like Madonna called me and put me in her Express Yourself video. I was in Elton John's video when Lady Diana died. Elton John did a video, and Kate Moss and I were in that video. So suddenly we got prominence, and that was the time of Naomi Campbell and Kate Moss and Claudia Schiffer and Christy Turlington. And suddenly we were everywhere. And I wasn't expecting that to happen, but I was glad it happened, because suddenly I was all over the world, traveling, meeting all kinds of people. And I remember the greatest thing for me during that time was, yes, you look at the photos or the videos and they're exciting, but they're actually exciting for the public. What I loved about it was when we were in the studio, we were on location, and I'm in a relationship with photographer, makeup artist, hairdresser, stylist. You suddenly build this little family that you're, there with for 1 day, 2 days, a week, whatever it is. And I found that I have a love for that intimacy with the people. And then in around 1998, I sort of came to a point, I was in Nelson Mandela's house. We were doing this fashion show with everybody. And I looked at him and I said, wow. And I met him and we chatted briefly. And I was like, here's a guy, just got out of jail after 27 years. He became the president of South Africa, the same country that put him in jail. He just has a peaceful demeanor, right? He's not telling me he's peaceful. He just looks and feels, that intuitiveness. And I said, I'm only meeting him for a few seconds here, and then I'm spending the day or a few days here. But that had an impact of saying, okay, I'm going to go back to New York. I'm going to stop modeling officially. Yeah, I'll do a few jobs here and there, but I need to find something else. It's almost like I've been on a journey of outer beauty. Everybody telling you how beautiful you are and how amazing you are, but really they don't know anything about your inside, your inward journey. And I didn't know too much about it either. So then I'd read about Ayurvedic medicine and yoga, and I was doing some yoga at the time. So I took a 6-month course in yoga and became a yoga teacher. And then after reading a book by Dr. Frawley about Ayurvedic medicine, I couldn't find anybody in the States. So I just called this place up in Coimbatore. And there Sri Vasudeva is the teacher with Dr. Hari. And they were like, yeah, sure, come. So like a week later, I just got on a plane. And then I didn't know what that's going to be like, nearly, 10-year, 12-year journey of I am not coming back, and I'm not actually coming back to the States either. And I found, I've been on the journey of outer beauty. I'm going on this journey of inner beauty now. And I started to learn, the reason I love to be with these groups of people and that intimacy is because Ayurveda is teaching you that you have a relationship between doctor and client or patient. The practitioner is really looking at you in a way, observing you to see what is it that's going on in you, even if you don't know it's happening in you. So it's a very intimate thing that's happening, even without the words, right? Because to look at somebody at the cellular level, to see what are the molecules doing in this person's life inside of them, that person doesn't even know because they're living their life. But you can see it just moving, and the doshas are moving and the gunas are moving and the person's prakruti and vikruti, and that just got me. I was like, oh, wow. And then I had my Vedic chart done, and in 3 aspects of my houses, healing is in there. I just can't get away from it. Everything is for me about, can you heal? Can you help others to heal? Can you give people the roadmap of how to heal? And that's pretty much where everybody is in this world right now. Is the world itself, the ecosystem needs healing, and people themselves need healing. So, and that married outer beauty with inner beauty, and that was kind of that journey.
I'm going to come to the whole learnings and practice of Ayurveda, but first I just want to understand more deeply this gigantic transition that you had. What was the biggest challenge of leaving that lifestyle and, the prominence, all the pleasures of that world? Was there a conflict? Was it difficult? Like, what was the biggest shift that happened in you?
Everything goes away. You're not making money anymore. That's the biggest thing. Nobody's calling you anymore because you moved to India. As a fashion model, all doors are open. Look at the glamour and the beauty in the world gets everybody's attention. All doors are open. You can basically call anybody you want up. You can advance your career. You can do all of that. But when you step away from it, it's almost like people don't understand it. They're like, well, why would you give up all that money and fame and attention and all those things? But I was so engrossed in this, I was in a tiny place. I wasn't even in a big university or anything. It was a very tiny school. I was just so engrossed in, wow, people can really heal themselves and people can really, take care of themselves. Because I remember, after I came back, quite a few people text me and said, you were so kind to me and you helped me. I was a bit of an alcoholic in Paris, and then you took me to lunch, and then you told me, you can do these things to help yourself. I just had that inclination always. And it's in my Vedic chart.
Were you temperamentally like that? Or at least when you were in that modeling world, were you living that life of excess, of whether drugs or free love or,
Yeah. I was in the dichotomy and the extremes of both. I loved health, so I was never taking it too far. So yeah, I do a few drugs. I go out to have dinners, late nights and stuff. But I remember I was always home, and then I would drink my different types of herbs, because I also had a mentor at that time who was helping me with health and staying strong and all that. So he would get me to bring herbs from all over the world for him. So I was taking all these things. He was cooking organic food for me and stuff. So all our conversations were about spirituality and health and things. Then I go on, 4-day shoot for Versace in the middle of the desert, and then I would do some excesses there, but then I would come home. And I had rules like, okay, the night before or the day before you work, there's no drinking, everything's healthy, you have to go to work, right? So I never missed a plane. I was always on time, polite and, conscientious with people, because I was getting fed by these people. The creativity of Karl Lagerfeld or Herb Ritts or all these people, it was just feeding me, because I also love that creativity. And you're with the biggest creative minds at that time. So when you sat with them and you were intimate with them at the shoot or at nighttime, like we would shoot Chanel campaigns with Claudia Schiffer and Helena Christensen. We'd be like in Karl Lagerfeld's house in Germany for 5 days together. You won't get that intimacy with that creator at any time. You can go to dinner with them 1,000 times. It's just there's something, we're spending 5 days together. That fed me in such great ways. And Karl Lagerfeld was a very healthy person, actually. He was very overweight at that time, but he wasn't drinking, he wasn't smoking. And we would bring health in a way into good creativity. And they loved the fact that I was like that as well. Right. So there was a freedom in it.
When you look at just the Western approach to medicine and healing and health, and what you learned here, what is the cardinal differences in the way the West looks at health and, say, Ayurveda and yoga look at health?
So Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, they go back thousands of years. Western medicine is barely 100 years old, right? Western medicine just looks at symptom. So it says, oh, you have a scratch, let's fix that. Oh, you have a pain here, let's give you something for that. Ayurveda says, okay, let's take care of that symptom, but where's the root cause? So that's primarily on paper the biggest difference. The second biggest difference is modern medicine always needs a machine or tests to be done. Ayurvedic medicine doesn't need those. We intuitively are looking, and the person is giving us all the information we need, because the skin, eyes, hair, everything is the outside map of what's going on inside your body. And that is kind of the downfall of modern science, is they always need a machine. So those are the primary differences with
I've heard you elsewhere, when I was reading about you, you articulated it as also that, the Ayurveda tradition also looks at the mind and the body as very connected, and spirituality. Whereas, so it's a dialogue with your environment, with your mind, your body, and your sort of more inner search. Whereas Western medicine looks at the body in isolation, and that has its advantages. I'll come to, as I said, some of the doubts that arise around Ayurveda. But Can you explain that? That what is the mind, body, and
Mhm.
spirit connection?
Well, the first thing our Vedic guru taught was mind and body is connected. You can't separate them. So you have to treat one and the other or both. So modern medicine doesn't do that. So it says, oh, you have a problem with the body, go to a doctor. You have a mind problem, go to a psychiatrist, psychologist, somebody who knows about that. So we compartmentalize them separately because the body itself doesn't think. The body only reacts to the outer environment and to the mind. Those are the two things the body does. And that's how the rishis did it. You know, they would go inward and understand what's happening.
But then when you were learning it, but when people practice Ayurveda, they don't necessarily engage with whether, with say your mental state of being, so can you help explain that a little more? It's not like they're playing psychiatrist and the body.
Yeah. Well, when guru would teach you, they would say, look, I can teach you all the theory. I show you all the practices, but you will have to develop intuition, which is beyond the mind. The mind has its limitations. So the mind is the tool that we use to express, but the mind isn't how we solve issues. Intuitively, we have to connect.
So Yogi, just now listening to you, there's often this sense that Ayurveda is very, indefinite. There's this idea that's very airy-fairy, like you just said about intuition. It's not something that's replicable with any degree of precision or repeatability or reliability. So do you think that that's a fair accusation then, given like what you're saying, that it's intuition? What is the base science of it for those who don't know anything about it?
The science of the mind and the body we can record. The science of spirituality we can't. So that's where the airy-fairiness of it comes in for people, right? Like our guru would say, never bring the mind into intellectualism into spirituality, because you can't work it out. The part you can work out with science is, the science agrees that the body is made of the doshas, which are the elements. There's 5 of them: ether, air, fire, earth, and water. Everything in the earth is made of those. We also have the gunas in the mind. We have rajas, tamas, and sattva. So we also agree that there's balance and there's extremes, right? We can understand that. We can measure that. Science is starting to measure that in the body. Those are the things that we can understand intellectually. It's the other side that we can't understand, which is really, past. If we read the Vedas, for example, everything was about intuition, because the mind had its limits, right? But Ayurveda is very concrete in how it heals. It's a very scientific way of doing things. Ayurveda is very scientific when it comes to the mind and the body. It's just hokey pokey for people who don't have a spiritual practice when we're talking about intuition and spirituality. Because that stuff is measured inside of you. It's not measured outwardly.
Just for the moment, I'm delinking it. You say yoga and Ayurveda and the spiritual practice are all interconnected, and that's the holistic practice. But if we just look at now Ayurveda as health, just at the level of the body, there's the preventive aspect, there's the curative aspect, or there's the managing aspect of it. So are you telling me, at this moment when the government and elsewhere are trying to just expand the scope of Ayurveda, is it, not every practitioner will have a deep spiritual practice? Like, we need 2 million doctors in this country. I was reading 80% of the world actually go to traditional healing, and medicines. That's a WHO statistic. So the question I'm asking you is, does every practitioner of Ayurveda need to be that evolved spiritually to do it right? Or can you operate reliably at a lower level of that journey?
You can. Ultimately, you should, and that's how the tradition says you should be trained to have it all and practice. Because yoga is all about the mind and beyond the mind and meditation and all that, where Ayurveda is more about managing your body and your lifestyle. That's why the two connect and they're sister sciences. If you don't practice, you can be more imbalanced in your own life. Then can you be as effective in somebody else's health? I don't know. But I do know from my own life, when you do sadhana and you dedicate your life in the mornings to the earth, to Mother Nature, to the people, and to the higher power, then you tend to live your life in a balanced way. And actually, you have less problems yourself. So the practitioner should be teaching other people to, it's very common here, for example. Now doctors are telling people to go meditate. Why? Because they themselves may not meditate, but they see the benefits in some of their patients and other people, right? So to answer your question, no, they don't have to, but it would be a good idea, right? Because if I'm coming to you to train in something, and I say, well, I'm willing to do 50%, but not 100%. Well, then I should only be given certain responsibilities. If you own a factory and I only want to train 50%, then I have to only have 50% responsibility, right? So that comes into it to some degree. Can a doctor be useful without spiritual practice? Yeah, it will be useful absolutely to a certain degree. Because the Vedas teach all about karma and all of the different things as well. And that is in the fabric of the Indian society, right? Karma is very much there. Vedic astrology is very much there. So here it's different. I only speak to people about those things if I see that, they are open to it. But in India, it's very much, I know most Indians are now turning to allopathy and they're getting into that, but their roots are actually in the Vedas, right? In their consciousness is in the Vedas. So it would be very easy for an Indian, even the kids who are not being brought up with it, it's still in the ancestry,
right. So the question I was asking also is that, when you were studying this, you've studied it in depth. Is there scope then for a lot of quackery, or is it, that's the great anxiety right now, that if you're going to suddenly expand that field without it being codified or some degree of grading at what level of science, what level of knowledge are you at, then is there scope for a lot of quackery?
I don't see it as quackery because I see it as people are moving too fast. They want to study quickly. They want to quickly make money. I think that's more of an issue because then people are not trained properly. It's like somebody goes to university and they pass the degree, but actually they don't know what they're doing. You can have a doctor, goes to school, studies 7 years, does great, but they're not actually a great surgeon, right? So I don't think, because the spirituality aspect comes in, people think it's quackery, but I think the biggest problem is going to be, are people trained properly? Do they know what they're doing? We're seeing it right now here. People are just taking 6 weeks courses. Suddenly they set up a business and suddenly they're treating people. And it's fine if you're massaging somebody's body, but it's not okay if you're just giving them medicines and stuff. You can give them the wrong stuff.
I remember once when we were chatting earlier, when we first met, you were saying that in the Western world, 4 or 5 years of training on something seems a big deal, whereas here, like 10 years minimum or 12 years minimum, and it's still not enough, No,
it's not enough. I mean, when I was trained, when I was done, they said, okay, you're still not done. So after now 19 years of I still go back to the doctor. I still look at certain things. So Ayurveda is something that you have to practice continuously. Otherwise you forget it. In Ayurveda, we don't have names for any diseases. We're just treating the patients themselves, not the disease. And that's another big difference, I guess, from the two medicines is allopathy is saying you have kidney failure, you have this, you have that, you have psoriasis. Ayurveda is saying, no, I'm treating the patient because the patient today is not the same patient as yesterday.
Well, so then, Yogi, I'm going to ask you to just step back and come to base camp right now,
That's the thing about.
You're going to be a great sort of advertisement vehicle for Ayurveda. You're like, you're going to give me the modern day, the capsules of why Ayurveda should totally be believed in and relied on. So I'm going to ask you to do that. Give me the elevator pitch on Ayurveda.
On Ayurveda?
Yeah.
Ayurveda will heal you at the root cause. That's what the beauty of Ayurveda is. When you take herbal medicines in the right quantity, in the right environment, and they go into your body, that's healing. You will find healing in Ayurveda. You will only manage your symptoms in allopathic medicine. I say to people, go to the doctor when you have acute problem, pain, you have a dangerous thing happen, you need allopathic medicine, because there is no medicine that will help you quicker than modern medicine, right? Get in the ambulance, go to the doctor, you might have a ruptured spleen or whatever you got, go deal with it. That's going to be 1% of your life maybe, or maybe even less. Turn to Ayurvedic medicine when your lifestyle, how do you live? Ayurvedic medicine is great for that, because it will teach you to live in a balanced way where you won't have the issue in the first place to have to go treat it, right? Because if we look at most problems people have, is they're creating the problem themselves. Right. So if you turn to Ayurvedic medicine, it will help you manage and not actually get the problem. And that's the preventative part of Ayurvedic medicine, is let's not have the issue in the first place.
So that part I get, exactly what you've been saying about balancing food, and that's individual to everybody, what kind of body composition you have, and Ayurveda is sensitive to that. So the preventive aspect makes a lot of sense. I think doubts arise over the curative aspects of Ayurveda. So again, does Sushruta and Charaka and Vagbhata themselves codify what can be cured by Ayurveda and what may lie outside the realm of Ayurveda? No,
there's 4 different, they put it into 4 different categories. Easily curable. You have a fever, you treat it, it comes down. Not easy to cure, but you can cure it. Your fever turns into jaundice, you can still cure it. Then not curable, but manageable. That means you might have a type of cancer, it won't ever go away, but you can manage it. And then not curable. So people fall into one of those 4 categories. So Ayurveda is not saying we can cure everything. We're saying through the medicine is here's how to do it, but you may not get cured. It's up to your body, the condition of your body. It's up to your willpower. It's a lot of things have to come together for that to happen. If it's gone into the deeper tissue, right? So we have the 7 dhatus of the tissues. If it's gone into the bone and the marrow, so difficult to cure and probably not curable. But if it's in the blood, it's in the plasma, maybe, it's a much lighter part of the tissue, you have a better chance.
For those who don't know that much about Ayurveda, will you just give us the sheer marvel of the triad of Ayurveda? Like, who was Susruta, who was Vagbhata, and
So part of Ayurveda is written in Athartha Veda and Rig Veda, which are the books of knowledge that we say that they're the oldest. Shushrut, Samhita, and other physicians came along some thousands of years later, and they codified and they put things into books where we could understand, because most of the Veda we didn't understand. It needed to be translated because some of it was in mantra form. It was only gurus could understand them. So they came along and put them in a way that we could understand them. And they categorized certain diseases, and then what the cure was, what herbs to take, how to take them, what seasons to take them, brought panchakarma into effect. So you could get into the deeper tissue. So they are the physicians that brought Ayurveda in the way we know it today. And they basically said, the body is like nature. Nature is mirroring the body, right? Nature is made of the same elements. So use nature to balance your body and your mind. And that was the basis of it. We are natural. The ecosystem is feeding us. It's made of the same thing. So use it, learn about it, and then take something. So if you're hot, take something to cool down. If you're dry, take something to lubricate. If you're, so constantly it would teach you the opposites. And that's pretty much all you had to do. The principle of Ayurveda is if your digestion works properly, pretty much your whole body will work properly. And if it doesn't, you can treat it much more easily. So digestion has become, and that's why, now science is talking about microbiome so much, saying if the microbiome is healthy in your gut, which is basically intestines, then you're going to have a much more chance of having a good immune system, for example. So they're starting to connect that in science, right? So you can eat properly. You just need to bring the principles of Ayurveda into your diet, right? Based on who you are. So we sleep on the floor, for example. The principle of Ayurveda is let Mother Nature hold you, because as the bed is higher, the higher you get off the ground, Mother Nature can't support you. Kapha, when you're sleeping, kapha needs to be, of the earth element, needs to be more prevalent because it helps you go deeper into sleep. When you're sleeping on the ground, kapha is more dominant because the ground is, earth is more dominant. The higher up you come off your bed, vata becomes dominant and it disturbs your sleep. The softer your bed becomes, disturbs your spinal health, and it keeps you in a bad posture, then you have bad sleep. If you live in a high rise, for example, if you're more kapha dominant in the body, you're actually okay. But if you're more vata dominant in the body and you live on the 10th floor, you are now living in vata. You have more problems. I'm just bringing the principles of Ayurveda into my life and understanding it. It doesn't mean you have to live fully the Ayurvedic way. But I can tell you from my experience, if you bring Ayurvedic principles into your life and you live them, you will be amazed how your body reacts. It just naturally will go into feeling good. Right. And naturally, everybody wants to feel good.
So let me come back to the personal a little bit. What are the major shifts that, why did you stay 12 years? Talk to me a little bit about what transformation you went through.
When you feel good and you feel complete and you feel grounded, there's no feeling like that in the world, right? No drugs can give you that feeling, no drinks, no conversation. When you have that stillness within you that just brings you that peace, you want more of that. And that's what India gave me. Beside the fact that when I came to India, I just felt at home. I felt like, oh, okay, this is where I'm supposed to be, with these people, with this land. One of the principles of Ayurveda is food, ahara, which is food, is only a lower energy, let's say. A good conversation is way more of a higher energy, right? I'm fed by this conversation with you. I don't feel hungry, right? So there are higher versions of food that we can get into. That's why some people, eat very little, but they use the energy of the sun. Other people use just water. Other people use the air. There are much higher energies there. And Ayurveda and yoga teach you all of these things through tantric medicine and Siddha medicine and Vedic medicine. So when I was in India, I was like, wow, the expanse of how you could be taught to go into this peace, there's nothing like it. India has this amazing expanse of knowledge, practices that no religion has, no society has. And it's such a depth. So when I'm in India, and I mostly spend my time in a small village or in an ashram, and I go to the cities a little bit, I'm just grounded. That's how I can explain it. So Indians have that on the doorstep, and I was like, my conversations with Indians are just different. We always inevitably come to spirituality and health and well-being and how we can do good for each other and the earth, and that's why we're here. Basically, we're not here to just evolve in singular person. We're here to evolve as a culture and together. And that's the basis of Ayurvedic and yogic teaching. Yesterday, I was talking with somebody here and I said, Western culture was built on the pillars of pleasure, comfort, entertainment, all the most unuseful things in the world because they're all very self-serving. India wasn't brought up on that. It was dharmically always about others, healing, togetherness. And what's happened in the fabric of society, and this is why I say it's harder, more difficult for people to heal themselves and Ayurveda to be effective, is people are singularly living now. They're on their phones, they're on their computers, they're working harder than ever, but they're alone. Even when they're with other people in an office, they're still alone. They feel alone. They feel like the world is, the weight of the world is on top of them. That's making people sick. That's the number one thing making people sick.
So what did you carry back? You're back in Los Angeles. What is the level of practice that you've taken back? Is it more in terms of advice on food, or do you are you a doctor that people can come to? Yeah. What level of practice have you taken back with you?
So in the last, now it's been 19 years since I was there. And we are in India a couple of times a year, still studying, we study yogic principles in the ashram and with our doctor in the South. I used to do everything. I used to go to people's homes, stay with them for a week or whatever they needed, do panchakarma, treat them, everything, right? After 19 years...
For the audience that won't know what panchakarma is, can you just tell me?
Panchakarma is the primary 5 cleanings of the body that Ayurveda specifically says to do. So it's vamana, the vomiting, we massage the body, it's drinking of ghee, and then you do varichana, which is purgation. So we're using all the orifices of the body to cleanse them and nourish them. Because the principle of Ayurveda is when you cleanse the body, you need to nourish it. You need to feed it back, because once you've cleansed and taken out so much out of the body, you've also taken a lot of goodness out of the body and minerals and vitamins. You need to now replenish and nourish. So when we cleanse, we nourish at the same time. So these panchakarma is the 5 cleansings of the body and nourishings of the body with herbs. And then we also have a purva karma, which is everything needs preparation. So we also prepare the body and mind for a few days or sometimes a week before we even do panchakarma, which is the cleansing. So again, this principle is like of anything. Before you take up any task, you need to prepare. You need to prepare yourself mentally, physically, and all. So Ayurveda is doing that. So I used to do everything. And Ayurveda, when you learn, especially for a guru, they say, as you evolve and as you get older, you will put certain things aside and you will go on and do other things. So for example, one of the teachers, gurus who taught me, now is back at their village and they basically don't do any treatments, don't do anything, and they just diagnose and tell you what herbs to take. And if you need treatment, they'll send you somewhere else.
Why is that? Why is that?
Because we also are ourselves getting older in body and mind, and this is where the spiritual aspect comes along. We tend to do more spiritual practices. We tend to go back to the woods, let's call it, and do more spiritual practice and leave the younger people to take over and do certain things. So that's why I don't do the physical treatments anymore.
So Yogi, I wanted some personal examples, in this 19 years that you've been pursuing this knowledge. Tell me some anecdotes of people, whether now in the Western world in your current practice or people you met in India, some stories of what surprised you or really made you marvel at the potential of this tradition. Stories of transformation.
Yeah, there's many. I mean, what I'm finding in, you're putting me on the spot with one person. Let me think. Yeah. I mean, I can tell you on a broad sense with many people, because what I'm finding over the time is, and remember, many of us get together, doctors and practitioners, and we compare notes and we talk about our clients and patients. What we're finding across the board is the mind is the most, the thing that you need to care about the most, not the body itself, because the body is only following what's happening in the mind most of the time, except for environmental things, right? So what I'm marveling at is the power that people have in their minds of helping themselves, right? If you come to me, like I said, and you want me to heal you, that's a different partnership than I tell you how to heal yourself. And then you start to find out, oh, I am part of nature. I can heal myself with nature. That becomes a marvel in people's head, because they now realize, oh, I wanted relief at the beginning. I just wanted relief, but now I see that I can truly help myself in all aspects of my life. That becomes a relief in people's head, because they realize, oh, I didn't just want relief from, let's say, I had kidney problems, or I had a urinary, problem. I now can take this totality of the 11 systems of the body and the mind and manage myself. There's no greater empowerment when you can start to manage your own health. That to me is a marvel. And that's what people react to. When you expand their consciousness into, well, it's not just about this little thing that's happening to you. You got these aches and pains, a migraine, and, basic stuff because you have stress. But when they manage their stress and they don't have the migraine anymore, that's when that aha moment clicks in their head. And it's great for, a practitioner to see is, they don't need me as much anymore. They now can manage themselves and come to me for more acute stuff.
So tell me a little bit more about your own personal journey. That, once seen photographs of you in impossible positions, and of course you have other yogic practitioners who do that. So that's at the physical level. One knows that it needs to cross every physical boundary that one imagines, But talk about your own personal evolution. What were some of the really difficult things you encountered, and then how did you cross it? What was the new space you entered into once you crossed that difficulty?
Well, when I was studying, it was great. Everything was great. I was, even I was saying to my Ayurvedic guru, well, I'll just stay in India. It's just beautiful here and I'll meditate. And he's like, what else are you going to do here? It's like, I've just taught you all these great things. You need to go places where people are suffering and help them. I was like, okay. So I think one of the hardest things was re-entering sort of Western culture and life and work and earning money. And that becomes a bit of a shell shock, because you've now got to put into practice everything you learned about being peaceful. So yeah, it's easy to turn your body into a pretzel and have a good time. But then the rest of the day, what are you going to do? You've got to build a business. You've got to get out there. You got, that aspect of it is really tough, because you're having to do things that you're not comfortable in. So you're not as balanced as you want to be. It's great in the village. It's great, up the Himalayas, but, keep doing that within society is tough.
So you're saying to keep that inner equilibrium and a sense of stillness in the midst of that.
Oh yeah. Easy to eat properly, easy to do your practices. You get up earlier. You can do all that. That's just self-discipline. But once it's interacting with others and having to run a business and having to be in society and, flying around and, all the rest of it, all of that becomes a challenge, which is basically what everybody's challenge is, right?
I just want to end with, you said the difficulty was the transition back to Western culture. The question I was asking you was, in the process itself, while you were seeking the yogic path, what were the biggest challenges then? Talk to us.
Well, when I first came back, there you're getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, you're doing sadhana.
No, not coming back here, being there,
Where, in India?
Yeah. What were some of the doors of perception you walked through in following this so deeply?
going more into the spiritual path and Ayurvedic path, it's basically all bliss. There's no, like I said before, when you go into a practice and it just gives you fulfillment, there's no resistance. All our problems come from resistance and the extremes, going from hot to cold, extremes kind of thing. Most people's issues are they're working, but they're not feeling purposeful. So they're working hard, but inside they're feeling, why am I doing this? What am I doing this for? And what am I getting from this? I go to work, I just get some money. What else do I get? What am I doing for the world? India was set up in that sense, some thousands of years ago for purposeful living, unified living. And I'm talking about the Ayurvedic yogic way, not just the general way.
Do you feel a lot of skepticism when you're teaching Ayurveda or yoga, or has it just become a fetish, or do people understand the deeper principles in?
They get it, they want it. It rings true within them. My guru, Ayurvedic guru, said, that 19 years ago, he said, you are the people bringing Ayurveda back to India, because all the Indians are turning to allopathic medicine. They're forgetting about their own tradition. You'll bring it back to India. Indians will find it intriguing that you brought it back to India, and then they'll get back into it. And the circle of life will continue, kind of thing, because Indians first brought it over to here, and that rang true in certain people's heart. Nobody can argue with nature is there. Everybody can see it. We are organic. Science says so. Nature feeds us, right? Air, water, food, right? Nobody can argue with that. Everybody agrees on that. Ayurveda just says, put it in the right order for your system, and live with it, don't abuse it, and use it in the right quantity, right time, and all of that. And that's basically what Ayurveda is saying. So nobody can actually argue with Ayurvedic living. It's just when we bring in spirituality, it puts that thing into Ayurveda, and then everybody goes, that's hocus pocus. Well, leave spirituality out of it completely if that's not your thought, and just get scientific about it. It's very simple. Nature, you're natural, you need each other. It's like a relationship. Don't abuse it. Use it in the right way. And then you'll thrive together. That's Ayurvedic medicine.
So just in this expansion, Yogi, of taking Ayurveda into urban Indian life or into the Western world, there are just so many people doing it. Is some of it getting disfigured, like these very deep philosophical principles that underlie this science and way of being, or knowledge tradition? Is it getting disfigured in any way?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, like anything that goes commercial will eventually have a part of it not be practiced or sort of bastardized in a certain way. And yoga, yeah, I mean, the pure yoga was brought to the West by Vivekananda and people, Shivananda and all those guys. And then suddenly people, because of modern society, people understood the physical aspect of it, but not everybody understood the spiritual aspect of it. Or maybe the spiritual aspect of it was too demanding, right? Time consuming. So the trend went into that type of yoga, hatha yoga, from the hatha pradipika, to become suddenly 50 different types of yoga, right? Before that, we had schools of yoga, which was bhakti yoga, hatha yoga, raja yoga, and there's 5 or 6 of them. They were brought by, people who understood yoga completely, and they had a certain way of living around the yogic principles. What the West did was take physical yoga and then cut it up into so many different styles and then call that yoga. When,
again, we were chatting earlier, you were saying yoga is about stillness or journeying towards stillness, whereas a lot of the practices now has turned it into almost like aerobic, like creating more fire and
it's acrobatics. Yeah. Basically, people are physical. They've got more fire, drive towards work, pushing, achieving their goals. And the physical aspect of yoga goes with that much easier because people can sweat. Then you had Bikram who brought, hot yoga and all these different things. And actually people got more imbalance doing all of these yogas than they didn't. A friend of mine once asked me, well, is it better that they do yoga, but it's not exactly the correct way, or is it better they don't do it? I said, well, that's kind of like you say, well, is it good to have a car, but it doesn't have an engine, or you have the engine, but the car's not there, So yoga is a system. It's a science. You can't just take bits of it and then apply it to yourself and then build your own thing around it. It's not supposed to be used that way. The journey into stillness isn't just through the physical aspect. The yogis brought the physical aspect just so you could sit and cross-legged and then be still. That was the purpose of that. Yes, they do have deeper meanings, but we don't even need to get into that. The basic of yoga posture was Padmasana, sit quietly, now do the higher practices, breathing, chanting, meditation. We've got way away from that. We're in a whole different field now. Everybody's doing acrobatics and the whole bit. So they are getting some benefits of being more flexible and those kind of things, which are wonderful, but they're not getting the physical, the mental benefits, through yoga nidra and all those different practices. Of course, in every society, there's going to be the people who are doing it completely improperly, and then there's going to be mostly the people who do part of it. But one thing I would say to everybody listening is never change it. Do it in smaller quantities, but don't change it, because they were brought by learned people. They weren't just people living like we do today. That's why we trust it so much. And that's why when we practice it, we get the experience within us, which is the most important thing.
Thank you so much, Yogi. It was good talking to you. Thank you.
So good to talk to you. Yeah. No, to provoke conversations in that way is interesting, and it's necessary, because I know the skepticism when I go to India is happening. We have part of that here, but people are embracing, they've embraced Chinese medicine for so long, here 40, 50 years ago. Ayurveda is very similar. So it's not a foreign language to them. And then there's a big movement on organic eating, non-plastics, all of that. And Ayurveda and yoga fit right into that model. And now, women leading the way with 35 million, yoga practitioners, they're all trying to eat better.
So just to end on a poetic note, did you ever have an absolute moment of where you felt you'd hit that, like a moment of Zen, in practice in these 12 years or later? Tell us that state of mind and body.
It's a state that obviously when you reach that state, there's no explanation. There are no words for it, because that's the idea of it. You're beyond the mind, right? When you go beyond the mind in that state, you're just observing everything. Everything is. Nobody is black, nobody's Jewish, nobody's woman, everything is just is. That's why you have no conflict, you have no emotions, it's just as is. There are no words to explain it except that. Even the feeling of peacefulness leaves. You're not at peace anymore. You just are. So suddenly you're there as everything else is there. You are one with all. I guess that's the best way to explain it. That's the place we want to keep going with meditation. But then we can't just sit in meditation all day. The idea of yogic practice is that you create that oneness, and then you go in the world and you live that oneness with everybody else, right? So as I'm interacting with you, I'm not saying, well, she's a woman, she does this, her hair is like, all that goes away, and I'm just interacting with whatever you're interacting with. And whatever your opinion is your opinion. It's great. I'm not here to change your opinion. I'm at oneness with you. So obviously it's not as deep as it is and as clear as it is when we're in meditation. But that's the idea, is that we take that energy and we bring it and we share it in oneness with everybody else. sometimes we get there voluntarily through practice, and sometimes it happens just automatically. You know, many people say, you know, they're sitting under a tree, they just let go, and there they are suddenly, and it happens spontaneously. So that's where we want to be. But like you know, one of our gurus, Satyananda, said, you know, he said, I was never looking for liberation, although he did that. He said, I want to be here. I want to be with the suffering. I want to be here with the people, because it's that up and down of life that's beautiful, that you go through with people, and you bring in all these principles to help you. But it doesn't take away your anxiety at times, and it doesn't cure you, and it doesn't help you, but you know it's there, and you're using it, and you're there with everybody else, you know. And like I mentioned before, people are lonely these days. They're alone in their own mind, in their own head. We need to get everybody out of that zone and get everybody, you know, in conversations again together, because our natural necessities that we need in life, and really true healing is happening at this level, is we just need the basics. All the rest that we're suffering through is because we want the extra. But if we come back to the basics, we're all actually fine. There is no stress in it. Oh, a little bit of stress, but not much.
Thank you so much, Yogi. And
yeah,
if I get to set up what I'm trying to set up independently, individually, I'll reach out to you, and let's stay in touch.
love to be a part of all things you're doing. And yeah, I get all your emails and things. I'm looking at all the great people that you're having conversations with. So I know you're going to do amazing things with all of them.
Thank you, Yogi. You take care.
I'll see you soon. And if you need anything, always call.
I'll do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Are you meant to come back at any point to India now?
I didn't go last time. My wife went for a month. I'm hoping this year. Yeah, we're looking maybe later, September, October.
Oh.
But I'll let you know.
November, hopefully it'll be for I'll set up a platform where I'll invite you, so that'll
Oh, beautiful. Love to. Yeah, keep me posted.
Yeah.